Welcome to another Friday Facebook session. Some people will be listening to this on our podcast, GTFO. Today, we're going to be talking about blogging and the use of blogging in content marketing. You'll notice that it's me, Dalley from Grow Traffic, that's presenting today and kind of hosting this. That's because Rachel's not feeling very well. But thankfully, I've got Talisa here from 10x Marketing, who stepped into the breach. And Talisa, do you want to just give a bit of an update about who you are and what you do and what your background is and the business?
Yeah, of course. But thank you very much anyway. The call this morning was obviously a bit of a surprise, but I love a last minute request. So let's just go for it. But yeah, so from myself, so I run a content marketing agency called 10x Marketing Consultancy. And that actually started in December 2019. Whilst I was actually in a previous marketing manager role for a big kind of global maritime company I was working for at the time. I was there 4 years, started to do a little bit, along the side, because, one of my biggest goals has always been to work for myself. Lockdown hit, I had a massive reality check, and on Easter weekend in April 2020, I handed in my notice, and 2 weeks later, I flew the nest, and here I was sitting on my own with 10x Marketing at the forefront of everything. So people thought I was absolutely mental, obviously, start of a pandemic. And then I decided to leave, a secure role, the marketing manager's role, and go for it for myself. But do you know what? Everything's worked out. Everything happens for a reason as well. And I'm just happy that I've kind of made it now to the 18-month stage, really. Doing it. So yeah, but got a team behind me now, got a few, different global clients as well. Because actually my actual degree is in international business. So global marketing is quite a big, interest of mine, you could say. So yeah, so it's going well so far. So I'm excited.
Great.
See what else.
And you call it 10x Marketing.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a marketer, I'm dead excited about that. But you think about the kind of business owners that maybe are watching this or listening to this. Do you want to explain what the 10x Marketing is all about?
Yeah, there's a couple of different aspects actually for the 10x and why it came about. Originally, I loved the name because when I was in my last role, whenever we did something as a marketing department, my CEO used to always ask the question, how can you 10x it? So how can you 10x it in terms of how can you make it better? How can you repurpose it 10 times? How can we leverage it 10 times? And it was just always that kind of phrase that was in the forefront of my mind. But when I did actually start the business originally, I also had 10 areas of marketing, which I did touch. I have restricted it back to 5. But ultimately, I'm trying to say to people, we'll help you 10x your marketing activity, leverage it 10 times, repurpose it 10 times, and fingers crossed, get you 10 times the amount of leads coming into your pipeline. So there's lots of different angles you can go from. But like you said earlier to me, it's a great conversation starter, for the name.
Yeah, it really is. I remember when people started to talk about the 10x concept, it was probably about 10 years ago. Was it something like that?
There is a book called The 10x Rule. If people have read that, they'll obviously think, it's to do with that side as well. And it's just that having that mentality. And I think as an entrepreneur, you do have that anyway of how can I 10x this further and better as well.
So from the kind of SEO, and we'll be talking about content shortly, but from the kind of SEO side of it, one of the kind of the 10x rule is always look at what else is out there, and then try and think about how you can do it 10 times better. So it kind of really resonated with me when I heard that. Which I think is really good. So today we're going to talk about blogging. We're going to talk about blogging from a content marketing perspective. I think a lot of what both ourselves and you, I think a lot of it is orientated towards content marketing, and blogging is a central part of that. We do it from an SEO perspective, so we primarily are thinking about content marketing as an inbound channel. So we create content that drags people into our clients' websites. I think it's very easy for us as an agency and for marketers, marketing managers, business owners as well to think about content marketing in terms of blogs. How would you say you should use blogging for content marketing?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of a blog for me, ultimately it's to kind of inform and educate your audience. So, first off, you've got to figure out who that audience is, who you're speaking to. You've got to find out the pain points. You've got to find out what questions they're asking. If you can try and answer their questions through, the results of you posting a blog, that's ultimately, going to work wonders firstly for SEO, like you've just mentioned, but it's also taking that buyer through the journey that you're wanting to push them through to ultimately to become a customer of yours. There's great, platforms out there like Ask the Public, where you can easily see kind of what questions your audience are asking, and you can easily just pick them out from, an SEO perspective and create a blog for it. Now, at 10x Marketing, we kind of have two buckets of content within a strategy. So I class it as the pillar pieces of content, which in my eyes is your longer form piece of content, such as a blog or a lead magnet, a PDF guide, something like that, or like a long-term like webinar or something. And then I class it as like the micro pieces of content, which is, your more smaller pieces. So social media, infographics, and, the smaller aspects. So ultimately what I say to people, your blog's an amazing starting point from any kind of piece of content strategy that you're working from. It's your bigger piece that you can then start to break down and mold further through your other channels. Ultimately, it's, your main part of your website that's going to be updated the most frequently as well, which is what we all want from like an SEO perspective. Yeah. And you're just you're always wanting to try and send traffic to your website. And if a blog's, going to do that and it's going to, answer questions, educate and inform your audience, then it's a perfect place to begin. It also as well, finally, it, positions you as a thought leader in your industry. You can really start to show your expertise, your knowledge, show yourself a little bit different to what maybe your competitors are talking about as well.
Yeah, I think what you said there as well, that kind of educating and inform your audience is really important. And quite often business owners who haven't really done a lot of blogging, haven't really thought about how they're going to use blogging, they'll quite often they will struggle because they don't know quite what blogging is for. They think about it in the terms of a news section, maybe. They will just publish. What's the word? They'll just publish and promote kind of bits of content that's specifically about their business and don't necessarily engage with the customer. Do you get, when you speak to, and I know you said that you've got a lot of customers that are kind of international, so I would guess from that you would probably be dealing with marketing managers who might have a bit of
marketing managers or business owners, really. It just depends, but for them, a lot of my clients actually do run with blogging. I'd say my biggest area of business is social media, but ultimately blogging is then great for social media and they kind of work hand in hand. So I'd always suggest to people, how important blogs are. Like I can remember in my last company when I was a marketing manager, and when you're in a big company in a big marketing department, you're always looking at ROI in terms of what leads coming through. And I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say, blogging is sometimes really hard to track, in terms of a lead coming through, because you can track, your website analytics, but in terms of a lead actively coming through, it probably is not going to be top of your list of, what's going to work the best. But it's more of a long-term game. I always think it's, a long-term gain. And my CEO always used to say to me like, well, what's the point in blogging? What's it do? And I think still people have that mentality. They don't realize, the impact that it has, one on your website, one on your Google, and, it ultimately feeds into all your other content channels as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the way that we use blogging is a kind of cumulative, it gives a cumulative traffic growth kind of strategy tactic. It also helps the SEO, but mainly we're just casting that net quite wide, soaking in loads of relevant traffic. And we're going to go on to kind of talk about the buyer journey in a second. And I think it's kind of, we're leading on to that now. So how do you think that blogging and content marketing more generally should be aligned to the buyer journey?
It has to be. Like, I think it's one of the key pieces. I mean, your first point of call is obviously understanding your target audience, what the problems are, how you can, solve the problems, really digging deep on that. Actually, I think it's such an important piece of work that every person should do in every business. But then it's understanding, okay, so there's the awareness stage, you know, that's great for blogging. You're trying to put your brand out there, you thought leadership pieces, how you can educate people and answering people's problems as well. Then you've kind of got your consideration stage, which is, you know, you can start to bring a little bit of social proof in and maybe why you're different. And then you've got your decision stage, and that's where you're trying to obviously get people to make an action. But there's a 3-step process that I use in all our content marketing, which is know, like, and trust. So, you know, the know stage is similar again to awareness. So you've got to bring that through in terms of the buyer's journey. You've got to make sure you're the one that appear on Google searches if people are searching for things, you know, locally. Liking you. So I think that's the type where you're starting to bring out that personality side, really showcasing what you're all about as a business. And then the trusting side is, you know, that's where you're bringing some social proof into there. So people actually think, oh, actually, yeah, what they're saying, I like what they're saying, I trust what they're saying, maybe they are the person that I need to go for. So yeah, the buyer's journey is so important. And never ever forget either that obviously when someone becomes a client, like, you can't forget about them. Stop always trying to get people more into your funnel. Actually try and get people to stay with you as well, that retainment there.
Do you know what, that's a really good point actually. And quite often when we think about the buyer journey and we talk about the cycle, we quite often focus on the kind of initial bit, the awareness, the consideration, the decision, and we then don't go on and think about loyalty and then what's the next one, where you actually get them to go out and they become ambassadors for your brand. And so, but I think it's very easy to get really fixated on the performance element of it rather than the kind of whole branded process that a potential customer who goes to a customer or lapsed customer, it all has to play together. From my perspective, you know, I think you're dead right what you said about the about understanding your potential customer. It's something that lots of people don't do properly. They don't think about it. They don't put enough time into it. And you can tell this in the content that they create often, because they often primarily create awareness phase content because they've not thought far enough down the funnel. And they often write the same pieces of content, or they create the same videos and the same infographics are created, just in slightly different ways, because they are so focused on that sale and actually understanding the process and the journey that a buyer needs to go down in order to really inform the sale and make the sale happen. So this is something that I always advise our clients. I always suggest that they start with consideration phase content. And I always say, get your consideration phase content done, because that tends to be the bit of the buyer journey, the bit of the kind of content side of the buyer journey that your competitors don't do very well. What do you think about that?
100%. I think the rarity angle of copywriting is so important. I actually have like a copywriting kind of matrix, and rarity in there is, you know, one of the most important. It's at the middle stage, but that's how you can really set your value proposition forward and how you can show to someone why they should come to you and not to a competitor. And if you can do that from the art of blogging and, you know, in a long form piece, that's, you know, going to work wonders really.
Absolutely. And when you talk about decision phase content, and this is just thinking about for kind of some of the business owners that might be looking at this, who might be not quite as au fait with marketing terminology as we are. So we're talking about awareness is the top of the funnel, top of the buyer journey, where a customer starts to recognize that they've got a problem, and they're starting to look for how it's fixed. Do you want to just give some more information about how we talk about the funnel?
Yeah, of course. So obviously awareness stage is, like you've just said, it's bringing people into that funnel. It's you start to speak to people that's ultimately, you know, got a problem, wanting to find a fix for it. Consideration stage is then, you know, starting to maybe offer that added piece of content in there. So you might start to bring some personality in. I think video is an awesome kind of piece of content for that consideration stage, because you can really start to put yourself out there. But just that final decision phase, I think you've always got to have some form of action that someone's going to take. So for me, the best point for that is lead magnets, because you definitely get in their details. Ultimately, that's what we want. We want in them to actually pass over their details to us. So lead magnets is very important. But what is even more important from a lead magnet point of view is don't let someone just download something from your website and then never speak to them and get some salesperson to call them up in 3 days' time. Like, that's just not going to work. So what you actually need to do is try and, nurture them through a lead nurturing piece of, it might be 6 to 10 emails that goes across a 4-week period, where you're going to try and speak to every kind of objection or pain point that that person's going to have in their mind. If you can start to answer that before someone actually reaches out to actually call them or, personally speak to them, hopefully you've kind of got them at that decision phase near enough over the line. So, you prepped more. You're not going in blind.
Absolutely. So just to have a bit of a recap on what we've talked about. Our first kind of question was, how should you use blogging as part of your content marketing? And we're talking about creating content that educates and informs your potential customer, or even your customers that exist at the moment. Our second kind of topic here was looking at how we should align the content marketing to the buyer journey. And we've talked about various different ways that you can do that, how you can create content at the different phases of the buyer journey in terms of getting them when they're just becoming aware that they've got to make a decision or they've got a problem, right the way down to helping them to learn how to think about the different types of solutions that are out there, and also actually deciding. And then we've talked about kind of email marketing that can be used to follow that uses various triggers, I expect, and there's a lot of different ways that you can use automation here. I think we're kind of leading on to our third question, which is, how should blogging be used in conjunction with other parts of content marketing?
Yeah. So kind of going back to what I first said in that first question of pillar and micro pieces of content, I would class blogs as, a pillar piece, especially because I don't know what your thoughts are on this, and I know different people have different opinions, but some blogs now, like 2,000 words, to hit that optimum SEO, that's a lot. It takes a while. It's not a short piece of content anymore for some people, if that's the strategy they're going down. So ultimately with that, you've kind of, with a blog, you can repurpose it in 100 different ways. Repurposing to me is critical. I think if you're going to, focus on one piece of, a key message in a blog, you need to try and transfer that across all your different channels then. So it depends what people have got, what they're working on. But from a blog, you can break it down into repurposing pieces. So you can break it down into, 5 social media posts. You can break it down into short little videos. You can break it down into infographics. But as well as breaking it down, you can also build it up. And I say, like a lead magnet, if you've got 5 blogs on a certain topic, build them together, whack it into a lead magnet to make it something a bit more of a, have a bit more weight so someone actually does want to download it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to make sure that kind of keyword strategy that you've put into your blogs as well transfers, throughout all the different channels. Again, that's really important. But yeah, repurposing it. And one of my biggest pet peeves with anyone that does blogs is they'll post it once on LinkedIn or whatever, expect every person in the world to see it, and then that's it. It's done. They've spent half a day, they've posted it out, and they think, yeah, like, I've got it. Everyone's going to come and look at that now. Where it's not. Unfortunately, you just got to keep pushing it. You got to keep going. You got to keep repurposing it into different angles. Some people might prefer to watch a blog, but some people might, actually prefer to watch a video. So you got to tailor it to the audience. Again, going back to what the actually, your target audience is, making sure you actually, getting in front of them in the right possible way.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And so hopefully this Facebook Live that we're doing now, which will later be used as a podcast, is a good example of this, because before the Facebook Live goes out on the Friday, we also produce a blog on the Monday that supports it. And then we follow it up with a blog that's almost a transcription of the Facebook Live, the podcast that will be going out. And then we use it again in the podcast in the GTFO. And so we're using it in multiple different ways, and it means that we can get it out to a different audience. We will promote it in different ways, put it out on different channels. And so we're really trying to get the most out of each piece of content that we create. And like you say, so we've essentially covered one topic in multiple different ways. So we're creating a little silo on the site, and more broadly in our social presence altogether. And I think that's a great way of of covering all your bases really, and make sure you get it out there.
There's definitely the repurposing aspect, but like I mentioned in terms of how I come up with the 10x name, there's also the leveraging aspect. So you can still keep that as a blog post, but where else are you putting it? Where else are you promoting it, if that makes sense? Even down to, creating a signature graphic for every email that goes out on the week that blog's, promoted, to try and get people to click through. You could transform it a little bit, change it up, from an SEO perspective, put it as a LinkedIn article. Like, there's so much you can still do with it without transferring it into a different piece of media, but you can leverage it far and wide as well.
I think you're right. And do you know what? I'm guilty of this myself. Yeah. That I'm guilty of creating content, putting it out there, and then promoting it a bit, and then abandoning it. In my past life, I'd have created like a content audit with a definition of what that piece of content was, what its purpose was, what the objectives were, and then have a schedule that everything, would tell me when that piece of content should go out. And I think we are guilty sometimes at Grow Traffic as well, in terms of what we do for ourselves, of creating a lot of content. We create 3 blogs a week, for example. We create at least one, piece of live content or social podcast content like this. And again, once it's done, maybe it's done. And we should probably get back to that thought process of going back to things, promoting it again. I love the idea of putting things in your email signature. At the moment, we just point people to our blog. But yeah, of course, why don't we point them to this? Why don't we point them to the podcast? Yeah,
I knew it. And it's hard to do. It is hard to do. And I felt guilty of it. When I've been in a marketing manager position, it's so hard because you're constantly then now thinking of the next thing that's going to come up. But actually, I did create a lead magnet tool at 10x, which is called a repurposing and leveraging matrix. And it's literally an Excel document which shows you every possible way you can repurpose all different content types, and then how many times, all the different ways you can leverage it as well. So if anyone wants to download that is available on the website, but is a good.
Is that freely available to download on your website? Yeah. Will you share that in the comments after the?
Yeah, of course. No problem. Yeah, because it is good.
That sounds really useful. I'd like to have a look at that myself, to be honest.
Yeah, of course.
So just to recap on that, then we're talking. We're gonna everything that we're gonna do. We're gonna repurpose it into multiple different ways. Put it on all the different platforms that we can get it out on. We're gonna continuously promote that topic, that content where we can. And it's something that you're right. Lots of people, especially marketers, are guilty.
Yeah, we're excited to go on to the next thing.
Yeah. Absolutely, and velocity is important in marketing, but you can do too much all at once as well. I think the next thing that we're going to look at is what should business owners be doing as well as blogging. Now, we've covered quite a lot of things that they should be doing, but are there other things that are kind of outside that content marketing sphere that a business owner should be doing?
There's two main things for me, I think, alongside, a content marketing strategies. First one, networking. Like, I could not even tell you how I've grown my business, without networking. Like, it's helped dramatically in this last year, even if it's been online on Zoom, constantly. We've met each other on networking. We met each other today on networking. So again, that's so good, and such a vital piece. Now, I'm not going to lie. When I first started out, I was guilty of going to every networking event under the sun. And you think, oh my God, everyone wants a one-to-one with me. Everyone wants my attention. I've actually got no other time to do anything else. So then I did decide, to join the one big networking group, which has worked wonders for me in the last, year. But networking,
BNI, isn't it?
It is BNI, yeah.
Yeah, we can say it.
It's worked wonders. So yeah, I know there's a lot of people BNI that you either love it or you hate it. For me, it's worked amazing over the last year. Yeah. So networking for one, and I think the second one's collaboration. So collaborating with other people, within kind of your power area, or just generally other businesses in, it could be in different industries. But I think collaboration is so important to try and, grow your business out there as well. I guess that is a bit more for like, B2B service kind of businesses, maybe not so much product wise, but yeah, for me, those two have been, vital for helping me grow and get more clients.
It is really important. I think, networking is the backbone to Grow Traffic success. We all network. Rachel's been at, I think our kind of longest standing networking group, we've been there for about 6 years now.
Wow. Yeah.
Maybe more. And you know, it's the, like I say, it's the foundation for how we get referrals, how people hear about us. It's opened a lot of great doors for us over the years. So it's really important, and collaborating, absolutely. I have worked in businesses where they've talked about every other company as their competitor. I think it's even if you find any company like you and us, we do a similar thing. You know, we've got similar things going on. We all produce content, but we have a slightly different focus. We think about things in slightly different ways. Our processes are different. There's room in the market for everyone, and you tend to find that everyone can share things around. You know, we work with a lot of we can build websites ourselves, and we do build websites, but we tend to work with a lot of web developers, web designers.
You can, this marketing's so bloody broad. It's so broad. And unfortunately you can't be an expert in every area. I know you'd love to be, but you can't. So I think you've kind of got to find, your niche, but you can still offer additional services out, but then it's about finding those, people, those other experts that can come in and support you on those projects. Because ultimately there's a lot of marketing that has to connect together, like the SEO, you've got to have the website, you've got to have this. So it's got to connect. But you've sometimes just got to hold your hand up and say, maybe I'm not the best person to do this. Maybe let's get an expert in to come in. So I work with like an SEO expert. I've got same for web designers, graphic designers, they all come in as like a freelance, support. And it works well. It works well.
Yeah. Well, Grow Traffic ran in exactly the same way for, I suppose, the majority of its life, really, in terms of the early stage of Grow Traffic. We had a bank of freelancers that we relied on. We still do have contractors and freelancers that we work with all the time. But we got to a point where we had to bring, resource in-house. We needed to do that in order to scale and grow the business. And I think when I always talk about our second founding. So I set the business up in kind of 2009, but our second founding happened when we created the limited company about 4 years ago. And since then, the value of kind of employing people has really been brought home. But you can't do everything. The whole team won't have every skill that you're ever going to need. And you're always going to need other people to come in and help you out. It's the nature of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I think the other thing to say on this topic as well is that it's very easy, because blogging is something that all of us can do in some capacity. We can all kind of sit down and write a blog, even if we absolutely hate it, and even if our grammar isn't brilliant and spelling isn't great or whatever. And it's very easy to think to yourself that you are doing enough, that you're marketing your business through blogging, and you send it out on your social media, you're getting it out via your emails, and it's dragging content in. But you need to step back from it sometimes and say, what else do we need to be doing? Great, we're networking and all the rest of it, we're getting referrals, that's brilliant. How many referrals will it ever bring in? Do we need to do lead generation over the phone? Do we need to do AdWords, or spend on paid social, or all these other things need to be considered as well? So don't just get fixated on blogging as being the solution to what you're going to do.
And you've got to do a lot. You've got to test a lot of marketing to find out what works. Unfortunately, that is just the nature of the world of marketing. So you've got to do that. And one of my biggest words in life and in business is consistency. So there's so many people that come to me and say, I've got all these 5 social media channels, I've got this website, I've got this blog, I've got this video, like I'm posting this on this day and this on that. Then I miss 2 weeks because I forget, or I just get too busy. And I just say to people, look, I would rather you choose 1 or 2 things that you are consistent on than try and get across it all, because it's just not going to work. Like consistency, is going to bring you the results forward, unfortunately. And it's got to be. So I'm always stick with that.
And something that I've always been realized and recognized in marketing is that you can't do everything all at once. And you might have a great marketing plan, And you know, if you're fresh in a business, you want to do everything. You want to do a bit of everything. But I always say, start with one thing.
Yeah.
Be consistent. Make sure you form those habits and process. I say habits. Hannah, our commercial director, would probably say processes that enable you to keep doing those things. And once you're good at it, then move on to the next thing. Not just move on, but add that next thing into what you're doing as part of your whole process. I've just noticed that time's marching on because you and I can obviously talk. So just in terms of what would you say the best tools are for content marketing?
Yeah, so I'll take you through a few of my favorites. So if we're starting at the before stage, you've got to have a content plan. My favorite kind of platform to do that on is Trello. I use Trello for everything. I mean, if you saw my Trello board, you'd be like, what the bloody hell? Like, that looks absolutely mental, but it keeps me organized. So Trello is definitely an awesome tool for planning because you can get it anywhere. Second is going back to the buyer's journey is having some form of CRM system in place. I think that's so important. People miss it. HubSpot, they've got a free one. Absolutely awesome. Highly recommend it to use for that. And then actually kind of creating content. Canva is the world of, creating the best, social media graphics, lead magnets, anything. Like, you do not need a graphic designer if you've got that. So that's an awesome tool. Scheduling platforms as well, social media wise. Personal one that I like is Social Bee because I can create content categories in there. There's loads on the market. I'm sure, you'll be able to find one that works for you. Email systems, so email marketing ones, MailerLite or ActiveCampaign are my two top ones. MailerLite's great for new businesses because it's free, near enough up to 1,000 contacts. So they are, they're the main ones really in terms of,
Those are some really brilliant tips in there.
There's another one final one actually. If you do a lot of video content, Subtitle is fantastic for about £11 a month. Subtitle, it takes your video, creates all your subtitles for you, it creates all your branding, and you can reshape it into any kind of format for whatever platform you need. So that's a good one as well.
That's a new one on me as well. So Subtitle, that's brilliant. Do you know what though? Just what you said before about Canva and how that's kind of changed the world of marketing as I see it. Because I've worked in marketing for what kind of 18, 19 years, something like that. And up until about probably 4 years ago, when did Canva come out? But anyway, it was 4 years, probably a handful of years ago when we started using it in anger. I'd never used a design platform or piece of software. I'd always had a designer that I would work with to produce everything for me. And suddenly, just this simple piece of software that's online, it can be used anywhere. I've even got the app you can do it on your phone.
Tell you something, where they created it they're going to be rolling, aren't they? Because honestly, it's been a godsend.
Yeah, without doubt. And I think it's changed the world of marketing and branding in the way that people are actually able to portray themselves in a much more professional way. I was, like I say, 4 or 5 years ago, I was still cutting things out in Paint.
Oh God, can you imagine? Like
MS Paint. So my tools don't use Paint, don't use MS Paint. That's probably a good place to start. Do use Canva, but I think that you're absolutely right. In terms of Trello, great idea. Use Pinterest boards for things like mood boards for ideas for different campaign activity, different pieces of content. That's a good one. Tap into your CRM, tap into your, we use Asana for our kind of task management, which is great when you think about when you need to do content marketing, you start to develop more and more content and you need to be scheduling that content and getting it out there more. You've got to use tools. You can't just sit there and produce this content, and otherwise you'll just end up not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to really quick recap. So how should you use blogging for your content marketing? You're going to use it to educate and inform your customers. How should you align your content marketing with your buyer journey? You're going to align it with the awareness phase, you're going to look at consideration phase, you're going to look at decision phase, and think about things like loyalty and advocacy later as well. In terms of lead magnets, you want to be producing lead magnets at the right stage of your buyer journey in order to actually get somebody's email address, which people forget to do. Just create content for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And how should blogging support the other pieces of content marketing that you do? Well, you should be repurposing all the content that you're creating, pushing it out on multiple different channels. So you're really developing a deep kind of rich silo around different topics. What should you be doing in terms of other things you need to be doing outside of blogging, outside of content marketing? Well, you need to think about networking. You need to think about collaborating with other businesses and also exploring all those other types of marketing that are, outside the kind of content sphere. And what are the best tools? Well, we've just had a whole range of tools talked about there. There are loads more, but the key thing is do use tools, because otherwise you'll be overwhelmed and you won't do it properly.
Yeah, definitely.
I think is there anything else that you'd like to point out? Anything else that you'd like to say? Any thoughts you've got?
No, I think that's it. I just think, blogging is, it's a great tool for any kind of content marketing strategy. So don't miss it out. But also don't forget to put some kind of action in there. Get your lead magnets promoted in there. Get other pages on your website promoted in there. All those internal links, backlinks, everything. You just got to spend some time on it. And then repurpose it and leverage it as far as possible. 10x it.
10x it. We'll leave it at that. You got a 10x for content marketing. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Talisa. Thank you for coming and stepping in at the last minute.
Yes.
Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone who's watched or is listening to this right now. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Speak soon.
Thanks.